Hello, in this video we're going to implement an app that uses a RecyclerView. It's going to be a minimal app that is just going to contain a RecyclerView and a button in its interface. It's going to be fairly simple, or as simple as we can possibly make it. The app here is, I already have the app built and running in the emulator on the left here. Basically, what it is a button at the very top, and below the button is a RecyclerView list. And whenever you click the button, it adds a new item to the list. Each item is based on the blood pressure data from the blood pressure app. It generates a random blood pressure reading and displays the category of that blood pressure reading on the first line of each item. And then on the second line of each item, there is the date. So each item is composed of two strings, two text view fields. And every time we click the generate button, we get a new item added to the end of the list. And you can see that when the size of the list exceeds the space on the display, we can scroll the list. So that's what we're going to implement. To do this, we're going to create an Android project that is based on the model view controller pattern. It's going to have 4 Java classes and 2 layout files. The Java classes that correspond to the data model are this blood pressure class and a blood pressure lab Singleton class. That is the data model. The controller part of the app are the main activity and app adapter Java classes. And the view part are the 2 layout files. There's one layout file that corresponds to the main activity, and there is a view holder layout file that corresponds to a nested view holder class. Recall from class that a RecyclerView requires an app adapter and a view holder class for support. All right, so we're going to create this app from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this particular project, and I'm going to start a new project. And this new project is going to be called RecyclerView Minimal. Okay, and the project location looks good. And we're going to click Next. We're going to take API 22 Lollipop as the minimum SDK. We're going to select empty activity. The main activity name is fine. We're going to want to generate a layout file, and we want backward compatibility. And I'm just going to click Finish there. And our main window appears. I'm going to go back to the home screen on the emulator. All right, so the app is the app as we initially configured it is being built. That'll take hopefully less than a minute. And once that gets created, we're going to we'll start to flesh out the main activity, and we're gonna bounce between the controller views and model aspects of the app as we build the app. Okay, we're still going. I think we're done now. Yeah. Okay, so this is our initial project creation. Notice that there's a main activity and an activity main layout. So usually when we create an app, we work with the output first. So let's work on the user interface. And we see here that we have a constraint layout with a hello world placeholder. We're going to change that constraint layout to a linear layout. And we're going to get rid of this text view placeholder. And we do want the linear layout orientation to be vertical. The default, I believe, is horizontal. All right. Now, we want our layout to have a button at the top, as we saw, and a recycler view below it. Both of these widgets are in the common grouping under the palette. So I'm going to drag a button onto the canvas there, and then I'm going to drag a recycler view below the button. When I do that, it asks me if I want to include the version 7 of the RecyclerView library, and I do. So we're going to click OK to that, and that's going to take a minute or so to build, because whenever you add a new file to a project, it needs to be re-indexed, and I think that's done. No, we're still going. Once that completes, we're going to tweak this a little bit to make it look better, and actually add important important reference information here. So let's first work with the button. We want the button to we want its width to wrap content. We also want a type to wrap content. We want the ID to be button generate. And the text is going to say generate, the title of the button. We want the button to be aligned with the middle of the display. So I'm going to go to Layout, Gravity here, and select Center Horizontal. And that does it. Those are all the modifications that we need to do for the button. And now for the recycler view, we're going to give this an ID of readings list. Okay. And the width and height are fine. Yeah, everything is okay for now here. And I think, yeah, those are the only modifications we need to make for RecyclerView. We're going to make this look a little bit better by giving the layout a margin so that it doesn't, run up against the size of the, the extreme size of the display here. So to do that, we're going to go to View All Attributes, Layout Margin, and under All, I'm going to enter in 15. And that's going to inset the widgets from the sides and give it a 15 density independent pixel margin. Okay. We're seeing it's complaining that the generate button title here isn't a string resource. So let's make it a string resource. I just clicked on Fix. That's fine. Click OK, and that clears that warning out. So we're done with this, with the first part of the view here, the main display. Now that we've done that, let's wire up these widgets and kind of get that out of the way. And to do that, we'll come here to the main activity and add those widgets. Nope, we'll make that private. call this mGenerate button, and we'll add the recycler view. We're going to call this mReadingsList. Now we'll come down here, and we will connect these fields, these instance variables to the widgets on the layout. Okay, so we've wired up the button here, and now we're going to wire up the recycler view. While we're here, let's add the on-click listener for the button. And when we click the button, we're going to create a blood pressure reading record. And we're going to add that record to the list, and this is all going to happen within the data model. But then at the end of that, within the on-click, we're going to add that newly created record to the recycler list. We're going to need to create a little bit more code to implement the recycler list. So for now, we're just going to put in a comment here that says to do create record, create blood pressure for reading record here. Okay, and let's make a few modifications to the recycler view, some initial configuration settings. One of the things that we want to do is we want to specify that the readings list, that the recycler view has a fixed size, and this is for optimization. This tells the RecyclerView class that the size of the recycler view is not dependent on the size of the underlying list, and that makes the display and processing of the readings list, the recycler view, a little bit more efficient. All right. We also want the recycler view to display a single vertical list. A recycler view can display your items in almost any configuration. There are two layout managers, one for a linear vertical list and another for a two-dimensional grid that are already built in. You can create your own layout managers for recycler views, but we're just going to use the linear list recycler view layout manager. So in order to do that, we need to add an instance of the linear layout list manager. So that would be this one right here. Let's call this linear layout manager, and we're going to set the manager for this readings list to that linear layout manager. We first need to instantiate it. So let's and the constructor for this just takes a context, and we'll use the current context, and then we're going to set the readings list set layout manager to linear layout manager, and then a little bit later on, after we create the adapter, we're going to add the adapter to the recycler list here, and we'll come back to do that as well. Okay, we'll give this a to-do prefix that that gives us a dash here along the right that we can jump back to if we want to. All right, so that's the beginning of the main activity controller here. Now let's go ahead and start to let's create the data portion, or the model portion of the app. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a blood pressure record. We're going to use a class for that I've already created and that you probably have already downloaded from D2L in class. If you haven't, this class is available on D2L, and I happen to have it already downloaded, so I'm just going to navigate to it. It's right here. I'm going to copy and paste it into my project. I copied it from the Windows Explorer. Here I'm using Windows. If you're using a Macintosh, you'll copy it from the Finder. Similarly, then I come here to the project, right-click on the package name, and I'm going to click Paste. And it's going to present me a dialog box where I can change the name. I'm going to just keep the name as it is, and the destination directory where it's going to be copied within the project is fine. And I'm going to open up a copy in the editor, so I'm going to click OK on that. And the blood pressure app, or the blood pressure class, is added to the app. You can see here that the class is similar to the blood pressure class that we implemented in the earlier blood pressure app. There are two static strings here. One modification is that we've made these strings private, so they're only going to be referenced from within this class. The BP method is now made private as well. It's only going to be called from within this class. It no longer takes systolic and diastolic integer arguments. It now uses member instance variables to determine what the category of the blood pressure reading is. Now we have some instance variables, some fields. We have the systolic and diastolic readings. We have a category index number value, and then we have the date for when this particular record was created. There's a constructor. Constructor takes the systolic, diastolic, and current date as arguments. It sets the fields, and then it also calls the BP method to determine what the category is based on the systolic and diastolic values. Then after the constructor, we have the getters and setters. The get category returns the string from the string array here that corresponds to the category index value. The category index value will always reflect the current systolic and diastolic values. That's because whenever we modify the systolic and diastolic values, we call the category method, or call the BP method, and set the category index value. And then down below here we have the get and set date access functions, access methods. All right, so that handles one part of our model. The other part is the array that contains a list of these blood pressure items. This is not the RecyclerView. This is the internal data structure that's going to hold these blood pressure records as we add them. And so there's only going to be one of these data structures, so we're going to put it in a Singleton class. And a Singleton class ensures that only one instance of the class will and can be instantiated from within the app. And the way we're going to add a singleton is we're going to, once again, right-click on the package name. We're going to come down, or actually start right at New, and we're going to select Singleton from this pop-up menu to the right. We get the dialog box. We're going to call the Singleton class BP Lab. We don't need to fill the entire dialog box out here. We're just going to click OK on that. It adds a singleton, an already filled out singleton class to our project. Now, this doesn't do everything we need to do just yet, but it establishes all that we need for a singleton class. These lines here ensure that this class can only be instantiated one time. And how does it do that? It does that first by making the constructor private. That means that no other class can instantiate this particular class more than once by calling the constructor. This constructor is not accessible outside of the class. Then it creates an instance, it uses an instance variable reference to the class, to the BP lab. And then it assigns, it initializes or calls the constructor from within the class. It can do this because private means it's only accessible, the constructor is only accessible from within the class. And this only happens once when the class is loaded. It is not recalled anymore after the first initial loading of the class. That's indicated by the static by the static modifier here, that this was only initiated the first time and initialized the first time. And then final means that it can't be modified ever again after this first initialization. Now, whenever we want to reference this single instance of the BP lab class, we call getInstance, and this returns this private static final reference to the class. And that ensures that we don't get more than one instance of this particular class. Now, that's the essential framework for a Singleton class in Java. Now, to have it do what we need for it to do, we need to add the list data structure. And we're going to do that right now. We're going to make it private. And we will call, it's going to be a list of blood pressure records. And we're going to call this, I think we're going to call this readings list. Or just readings, perhaps. Let's see what I have in my notes here. Yep, we're just going to call it mReadings. And one other thing that there are two things we need to do. We need to initialize this to an empty array list in our constructor. So we'll just do this. Okay. We're using the diamond operator here after array list. You usually put the type of objects that are going to be stored in the list. Java's type inference system will determine that this is going to be an array list of blood pressure objects, and it can determine that because we're assigning it to mReadings, and mReadings is defined as a list containing blood pressure objects, so we don't need to specify that there. And then the last method that we need to add is a getter for this list. And the way we're going to add that getter is have Android Studio help us. And I'm just going to right-click, select Generate, and Getter, and select mReadings list. And that's going to return a reference to our private mReadings list array. All right, and so now that completes the data model portion of the app. Let's save that off, and make sure that we're good to continue here. Now we're going to add the adapter. We're going to add on to the controller portion of the app by adding the required adapter and view holder classes that the RecyclerView needs. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a new class. We're going to have the view holder class be a nested class within the adapter class. So I'm going to right-click on the package name, go to New, and select Java Class. And we're going to call this class App Adapter. Its super class is going to be Adapter, which is right here. It's helping us out. And let's just go with that for now. We'll click OK, and it's going to create a new class called App Adapter. App Adapter takes a type. It's a generic, and the type is going to be the nested view holder class. So it's going to be, we're going to call this, we're going to call this app view holder. Okay. Now there's a little bit more that we need to do here. First of all, we need to flesh this class out, and that's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add this nested view holder class, and it's going to be a public static, which means it's a top level. It's essentially a top level class, despite the fact that it's defined internally. It's a nested class with respect to its declaration, but it is a top level class with respect to the fact that any other class can reference it by specifying the containing class qualifier. So we're going to just type in the class here, and this is going to be class app view holder, and it extends view holder, right? And RecyclerView is appended to, or is prefixed to the to those class names there automatically by Android Studio, and we'll accept those. Now these are flagged. They're flagged because we haven't implemented the required member methods, and we're going to do that now. We're going to let Android Studio help us, and we're going to have it implement the necessary methods that we need to override. And we can see here that it's giving us 3, and we will accept them. Okay, and you know what? I'm going to move it. It put them before the nested class. I'm going to drag the nested class up to the top. We also need to add a constructor for our app adapter. So just type in adapter. Okay, I'm going to add that like so. And before, one of the things that we need, we might as well have it flesh out our, yeah, we're going to add a constructor here because we need to add a constructor for this view holder class. Okay, so now we have the method, the method framework for our class, skeleton here, and we will now have it do what it needs to do. First of all, get item count. Well, first of all, our app adapter is going to contain a reference to our internal data structure that is contained within the singleton. And so what I'm going to type here is I'm going to type in private list blood pressure, and this is going to be M readings. Okay, this is going to be initialized to in the constructor, so it points to the single list that is stored in the singleton, the BP Labs singleton. So I'm going to type in here. And we'll just call this readings, and here M readings is going to be set to readings. I know I did. I declared this inside the view holder. It needs to be declared up here in the app adapter. Okay, excellent. Now a very simple implementation here is of get item count. This is going to return the number of items in the M readings list. So we're just going to return here M readings size, and that is the implementation of get item count. Okay. Now we need to recall that the view holder corresponds to the display of each record item, each blood pressure reading in the blood pressure readings list. So we need to set this up. This is going to have a corresponding layout, which is going to represent or present what is displayed for each item in the list. Okay, we need to set that up, and we're going to do that right here in on create view holder. Okay, now we're actually going to have the work of wiring up the view holder. We'll have that done in the actual view holder class, but we're going to set it up and then call that method from within the view holder class. So to do this, we're going to initialize a layout inflator. And there's now that layout inflator, and layout inflator from the view group that is passed in here. Current context. Okay. Then we're going to instantiate the app view holder class. And we're going to pass it the inflator and the view group. The view group is going to be what corresponds to the layout of the view holder. Right now, that is it's complaining. For a second, we'll address that, and then we're going to return this newly created view holder. And this onCreate view holder, if you recall from the sequence diagram that I showed in class, is going to be called repeatedly, or rather once for each item in the list that underlies the recycler. In this list that underlies the RecyclerView. Okay, so now we're gonna call app view holder the constructor here. Now our constructor only currently has one argument. There is an overloaded app view holder constructor that does take a layout inflator, and we're going to do that. We're going to make that modification so that it uses that other constructor. Parent. Okay. And when we call the super, we're actually going to we're using this particular constructor to call the single argument constructor. And we do that with, we're going to inflate, a layout. And, we haven't created the layout yet. Why don't we do that? Let's do that. Let's create the layout for each individual item. I'm going to right-click on Layout. I'm going to go to New. I'm going to select Layout Resource File. We're going to call this, let's call this Item Layout. Click OK. All right. Now, once again, we're going to go to Text. We're going to make this a linear layout. We're going to set its orientation to vertical. And we're going to drag two text views to it. All right. One of the things you want to make sure that you change in linear layout is that you make sure that its height is wrap content. If you don't make it wrap content, you will only see one item in your list, no matter how many items you add to it. All right. So now we have this is going to be what our item, what each individual item or a view holder will display. The first ID will be text reading. Okay, let's go here, make that text reading, and this will have, we won't put anything there, but in our tool display, we will have the text reading, and we will increase the size of this font from 14 to 18, and the second text field will be called, let's call this text date. And we're going to reduce the size of this text field from 14 to 12. All right, and that should do it for the view holder layout. So now let's go back to our app adapter, and we're going to inflate that layout that we just created. So we're going to type in our layout dot item layout. And what else do we need to add here? We need to add a reference to the parent, and false for attaching the view to the parent. We don't want to do that because we're going to have multiples of these. Let's see here. Why is it complaining? Okay, we need to make a call. The inflator is an object, and we need to call the inflate method on that object. Okay, so we're calling the base class, the view holder base class, and right within this constructor here for the view holder, we're going to wire up our widgets. There is a field within the view holder that's defined within the view holder base class that we're going to reference. That was going to help us wire everything up. Now this kind of corresponds to our onCreate or onCreate method in an activity, or onCreate view method in a fragment. We're going to wire up our widgets, and we're going to follow the same kind of scheme here. We're going to create references to our widgets. Here we have two text views, and one is going to be called mReading, and the other is going to be called mDate. Okay, and then right here we're going to set mReading to item view.find view by ID, and we're going to reference those widgets that we added to the view holder's layout, and this is going to be mDate equals item view that find view by ID dot text date. Notice that we don't have to cast here. Okay, so now we've done the initial initialization or wiring up of the view holders layout. All right, and we need to, okay, so we've done that. We filled out these two other methods within our adapter. The onCreate view holder method of the adapter calls the constructor of the view holder class to create a view holder for each item to display. Get item count returns the number of items to display, or rather the number of items in the entire list. And now we need to fill out this bind view holder. And what bind view holder does is it assigns the data that is in the current blood pressure record item to these layout fields. And what we're going to do here is we're going to call a method within the view holder, within the app view holder. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to, we are going to have to, let's make sure that we, okay, okay. Notice that we get an app view holder passed in. So this is the app view holder that corresponds to the item that we want to display, and we are going to call a method called bind, which we haven't defined yet. All right, and we're going to pull out the record from the list of blood pressure readings that corresponds to the I position within the list. That's what this I is for. So we're going to bind, or rather we're going to bind the data in the list to the view holder display. And so what we're going to do is we're going to call bind. Bind doesn't exist yet, so here we go. We're going to create this method. We're going to let Android Studio create it for us. Okay, and here it is. It creates the bind method right here, and the bind method is fairly straightforward. We're going to type in reading, and we're going to set text, and we're going to pull out from the blood pressure. Well, here we're gonna make it a little bit more detailed here. We're going to set the text of the item to the following. We're going to say here, let's do this. Let's you know what, in order to make this a little simpler, make the code a little simpler, let's create a blood pressure reference here. I'm going to call this M blood pressure. Okay, and then you know what? Sorry, forget that. We're gonna do that a little bit later. We're going to come here to our bind, and we're going to call. Yeah, we'll let that be blood pressure. And what we're going to do here is we're going to format this line, and we're going to get systolic, and we're gonna create a nice looking first line. Put in a dash. So we're going to display the blood pressure reading, and then we're going to follow it up with the category. Okay, and yeah, that's good for that. And then in the second line, in the date line here, we're just going to use the date. Why is that? Oh, no, we're okay there. We need to make that, we need to set that to string. Yeah, getting the date from a date object returns an editable object. We need to make it a string object, because set text wants string objects. So I think, yeah, we're okay with all that. We're okay with all that. And we do have one error down here. It's waiting. It needs a semicolon. right there. And we have another error here. We need to add a plus sign. Let's bring that down a line. Okay. Let's format this a little bit more nicely. Yeah. Okay. So we've now pretty much implemented our controller. Well, we have to go back to the main activity because we actually have not implemented the controller in its entirety because the main activity is also part of the controller. But what we've done is we've implemented the support part of the RecyclerView. We've implemented the adapter, and we've implemented the view holder. Those two classes that are necessary to implement the RecyclerView. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to flesh out the main activity. And here we're going to come into, well, now that we created our adapter, we're going to just add the adapter to our recycler, to our RecyclerView. And so we're going to just type in we need to add a reference to our adapter here at the top of our main activity. App adapter, and we're going to call it app adapter. We're going to instantiate it here. We're going to pass it a reference to the Singleton array. And then we're going to set the adapter that we've just initialized, instantiated. Like so. Right? And the last thing we need to do is we need to instantiate the blood pressure record for every button click. Okay? And to do that, we're going to use a random number generator. Here we're going to generate a random systolic value between 100 and 150. And that's going to be like so. And then we're going to implement a random diastolic value between 60 and 100. Got 40. Okay. Now we're going to instantiate a blood pressure object. And it is going to have the systolic value, the diastolic value, and the current date. Okay, it should be asking me to add that. I think it will eventually. There we go. Oh, missed my opportunity there. Yeah. Okay. When you press Alt Enter, we're going to select the Java util version of date, not the SQL version. And then we're going to once we've instantiated our blood pressure object, we're going to add that to the list in the Singleton. And we're going to add the blood pressure object to our list. Now that we've added the blood pressure object that we've just created to the list, we need to notify the recycler view that, hey, there's a new item added to the list. You need to refresh the list on the display. And to do that, we are going to call the app adapter. We're going to do that on the app adapter. We're going to notify item inserted, and we're going to provide the position for where that item got added. And it got added to the end of the list. So that position is the size of the readings list minus 1. And that are all the modifications that we need to make to get a basic recycler list running. So let's run this. Hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, we'll find out why. Yeah, it'll take a few moments here for it to run. In the meantime, this video just demonstrates how we implement a basic list that you can add to. Now, of course, you can delete from a RecyclerView list. You can modify individual items within the RecyclerView list and then let it know. You would have to notify the RecyclerView through its adapter by calling the notify methods as we did here. There's a notify item inserted, notify item removed, notify item changed. And you can also apply a notification to a group of items within the list. The next video after this, there's a part 2, and that's much shorter, and that will show you how to respond to clicks on individual items. All right, so the build finished, and now it's installing the APK, and we have it running, and sure enough, it is now working. We're clicking on the button and adding adding records to the list. You notice that we're randomly generating these values, and that's how you implement a basic RecyclerView in a very minimal app. That's it for now, and thanks for watching.